Everyone, Joe Axman here, the mediocre astrologer. He's okay. What's up, everyone? Merry Christmas. I think it's I guess not officially Christmas. It's Christmas Eve day, but right around that time. So happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. I don't celebrate Christmas, although in the past I have. It's just not it's not a religious thing for me. It's just in any case, happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Today I want to take a break from the Israeli Gaza Palestine issues. Hot topic, of course, and um, meaningful to a lot of people. But I want to talk about archetypes, right? And so this is um, something which I feel is central to my understanding and how I go about understanding astrology, having a fundamental basis for learning archetypes. I started learning this early on as a kid. I talk about it on my website, but my parents studied Eastern philosophy and religion, not religion, philosophy and thinking um, through macrobiotics. They had Japanese teachers. And so, yeah, I learned about yin and yang early on, which is binary division, dialectic, and then, five transformations, 10 heavenly stems, 12 earthly branches, nine key or feng shui astrology, and then 12 Western zodiac, as well as Vedic. But yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, I'm going to share my screen. Let's try and get some kind of understanding of what archetypes are. All right. All right. So here we get the summarizer. I guess this is an AI summarizer, but powered by Brave AI. Archetypes are universally understood symbols or patterns of behavior that are copied, patterned, or emulated by others. They are often used in myths and storytelling across different cultures. According to Jungian psychology, archetypes are innate patterns of thought and behavior that strive for realization within an individual's environment, influencing the degree of individuation or the development of the individual's unique identity. Okay, so kind of wordy, intellectual definition there. My definition is this, simply that if we take everything and lump it together, so there's oneness, sort of a homogeny, right? And then we start dividing that wholeness into parts. Those parts are archetypes, right? We can't really call oneness an archetype, although it starts there. Oneness, if we go into it, oneness would be truth or wholeness or God or completion. Consciousness is as an aspect of oneness. Why is consciousness an aspect of oneness? You might ask. Because in order to know anything, we have to be conscious, right? If you're unconscious, you cannot define consciousness in an abstract way outside of consciousness, right? In other words, what is consciousness? Well, you're not going to define consciousness if you're not conscious, right? So consciousness comes first. And this is something that we haven't quite gotten to in Western thinking, but they have gotten to this in Eastern thinking. Advaita Vedanta, Zen, Taoism, any of the really deep esoteric studies, probably, esoteric Christianity, Judaism, Islam, anywhere where they're going really deep into God or the study of truth, ultimate truth, in a very experiential way, right? Not an intellectual heady way. You're not going to arrive at it being a scientist, because a scientist is limited by the brain, right? But consciousness essentially is pre-thought, because before the thought, there's consciousness, and consciousness pervades everything. And consciousness, we like to think that consciousness stems from the brain, but how do we arrive at that conclusion? Through consciousness. So really, it's kind of ludicrous. It's the cart before the horse. Consciousness comes before any definition of consciousness, right? That's essential to understand, and therefore consciousness is not produced by it's not produced by the brain, right? Because that would sort of we cannot arrive at that conclusion. We cannot arrive at the conclusion that says consciousness is produced by the brain, because in order to arrive at that conclusion, we have to be conscious, right? Um, and that's a thought process that says, oh, consciousness came from the brain, and we don't know that. We don't know that really, because again, it's a thought. Consciousness came before the thought. We have to be conscious in order to think that consciousness comes from the brain. It doesn't come from the brain. Consciousness is. It's an aspect of truth. But let's put that aside. That's a whole nother topic, which would take a lot of deep diving and preparation for me to make a really strong case for. We're talking about oneness right now, which is a pre-archetype, right? You cannot call oneness. Oneness is an archetype of something that is not archetypal, right? God is not archetypal. Archetype is an idea. It's in the mind, right? God is pre-mind, right? Before any, if there's God, if there is God, if we're to really take this idea seriously of God, that would exist before any mind was created, right? No people. You have a period where if you're going back in time, there's not going to be any people. There's not going to be any animals, even, right? Even before single cell. I mean, before any life, there's God. It would still have to be God if we're taking this idea of God seriously. So God is before any archetypes. Therefore, God is not an archetype. We can make an archetype of God that is not God. That is like a finger pointing to God. That cliche, finger pointing to the moon, right? It's not the moon. So the archetype of God is not God, right? And that's also why it's like false idols and stuff. Like, don't make images of God and pray to that, because that's not God, right? That's just it's a secondary. It's an image of God. It's like the thought of God. Or that's why there's no, like, you cannot say God's true name. I think it's said you can call it, we have names for God, but like, there's no real image of God. There's no actual image of God. So a lot of different teachings recognize that. So oneness is non-differentiation, monism, right? There's nothing. There's no topic for discussion when we're talking about oneness, right? It's just, we could talk about it, but if you actually want to be oneness, then there's no talking, there's no thinking, right? You're just sitting in samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi meditation, being one with God, and that's pretty much it. There's no intellectual debates about that. There's no archetypes, right? So the first archetype comes in two, when you divide the oneness into two halves, right? And we're talking intellectually, right? We can't sit here with a knife and cut reality in two. We can cut a piece of cake in two, but we can't cut reality in two except with our mind, right? So number two is the fundamental connection to the brain, right? And that's where we get yin and yang. So I don't have an image of that, so I'm just going to stop sharing for a while just so I can talk about it. All right. So now we're at number two, and we're getting to the first archetype. Number two is the first archetype. Okay. So if we're talking about like how to understand archetypes, we could do like the lengthy intellectual word, wordy, I want to say word salad. It's not really word salad, but it's like almost like that. It's not really getting to the core of what archetypes are, in my opinion. Archetypes are a division of the whole, and therefore they need to add up to the whole, right? If you take 1 equals 1. But if you take 0.5 and 0.5, that has to add up to 1, right? It has to add up to completion. It has to add up to resolution. Therefore, all archetypes have an element that is part of the whole and can be seen as a part of the whole, right? And that all the archetypes together form a whole, right? So that is essential when we're talking about archetypes. Now, with anything abstract, you can take it in many different ways and rearrange it. So I don't mean to say there's not things that people call archetypes that don't fit into this kind of like whole structure, like where is it in the whole, right? But it's really easy to see when we're talking about numbers, because numbers can add up and they form a wholeness, right? No matter what system we're talking about, with system of 12, system of 9, system of 5, 7, whatever, right? Any number, all the divisions are going to equal a whole, right? Each is like a slice of the pie, right? And you put all the slices together, you get a whole. So the original division is binary, so this is yin and yang. The E's figured out, like, okay, so like if we're going to start talking about intellectual stuff in, abstract concepts. What's the most simple way we can do that? It's a dialectic. It's a division of two, a binary. They called it yin and yang. You can call it whatever you want. It's not necessarily call it yin and yang. You can call it anything, right? The word, sometimes people get caught up in semantics and they think it's a word. It's not a word. Words are irrelevant. Change the words, do whatever you want with the words, completely irrelevant, right? It's a binary. It's a two. It's a division of one division, one cut makes two, right? Male, female, up, down, hot, colds, right? Light, dark, day, night, whatever, young, old. I mean, there's so many. Contraction, expansion, right? Active, inactive, right? Fast, slow. So this is all dialectic thinking, right? And there's more than one kind of dialectic. There's binary dialectics and triplicity dialectics. But for now, we're just this is the binary dialectic thinking about how to think in yin and yang. And yin and yang is incredibly vast topic. I know it sounds like extremely overly simplistic, but I want to make a video about yin and yang, but I'm missing some key materials, some books. George Osawa was a Japanese philosopher who created macrobiotics, which is the health diet and philosophy. And yeah, okay, so if you know anything about macrobiotics, it needs a lot of improvement, but it has a lot to offer as well, right? So I'm not going to go into that, but there's a lot of uniqueness within macrobiotics, especially George Osawa's teachings, and then his student Michio Kushi, his teachings. But in any case, he took yin and yang to new places, right? That hasn't been gone before. And yin and yang is very traditional in most Asian cultures, specifically Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine, but Japanese also used it and developed it. Now, being that it's abstract, Osawa did change it, and that's going off on a tangent a little bit. He changed it a little bit from the traditional Chinese, and that's perfectly valid as long as you're consistent, right? There's no true way of doing it. We're talking about abstraction, abstract thinking, right? But yin and yang is very, very useful if once you understand it. It just seems so overly simplistic, so that it's like, okay, big deal, like whatever. Once you understand it, it has incredible utility, but it can easily be misused very much, right? I know a lot of people, I mean, here's my argument. Some people overly rely on yin and yang once they get a hand of it, and they reduce everything to yin and yang, which you can do, but if you're going to ignore other factors, in favor of yin and yang, you might be not getting the whole picture, right? I mean, it's easy to oversimplify things and just to be oversimplistic in your thinking and just be like, well, give a one word answer, like too yin, too yang, right? It's way more nuanced and complex than any case. So this is the binary. This is what I grew up with. I was well versed in this from single digit age. I don't recall exactly what it wasn't an age because it was just common everyday talk the way I grew up. I grew up in macrobiotic communities, study houses, lots of people. My parents were teachers, right? It was every single day talking about yin and yang, yin and yang, yin and yang, right? All day long. So yeah, yin and yang is a very complex but interesting study. And what's really interesting about it is understanding what is yin and yang in relation to each other, because it's not always obvious, right? So yeah, I don't want to go too deep into it, but like people will just, I remember having lots of arguments online, like what's more yin, what's more yang, this or that or this. Like I know one was like, which is more yang, a strawberry or an apple? And so like people would say, well, the apple's more yang because blah blah blah, and other people would say the strawberry's more yang because blah blah blah, right? All right, stuff like that. Or like, which is more yang, a short stout carrot, that's like, fat and short, or a really long thin carrot, right? The really long thin carrots more young. That's another topic for another day. And I could explain why. But in any case, it's incredibly interesting, right? Once you understand, once you dive down that hole, but it is complex, and I want to get the George Sawa's. He wrote all these theorems about yin and yang that I don't have right now. Um, every front has a back. The bigger the front, the bigger the back. These are universal laws, right? All right. Triplicity, the three. So this is a further expansion of archetypes, and this is universal. We can always divide things into three, just like we can divide things into two, right? We can divide things into three, and then we have the triplicity, like, obvious ones are like the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost in Christianity or Catholicism. In Hindu Vedic tradition, they have Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. And I'm not so sattva is peace, like the balance, the equilibrium, right? And then rajasic, and this applied to people and food the same way yin and yang is, but it could be applied to anything. It's very like fast and aggressive and angry, and and then tamas is slow and it's more the yin. Rajas would be the yang, tamas would be the yin, sattva would be the balance, right? Tamas is like slow, fat, wet, cold, weak, so like that, indulgent. So then we also have like the Hegelian dialectic, right? Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? It's again one side, the other side, the balance, right? That's the nature of the triplicity, three. One thing is interesting when you apply these essential archetypes to different systems. For instance, we can look at 1, 2, and 3 in relation to Western astrology, right? And we can apply something there. Okay, so Aries has qualities of oneness, right? Of God. Like, well, so relate this to what we know about Aries. Focus, right? The determination, the single-mindedness. An Aries on a mission might be like so single-minded that nothing can stop them, right? So pinpointed, right? If they're fighting, Mars and Aries, right? They might be fearless when they have that, when they're in their Mars, right? Just completely no room for fear, no room for decision or choice. It's just attack, right? So that's kind of the nature of the oneness aspect, right? And of course, when we're talking about these numbers, you have to look in relation to one, because Western astrology is a system of 12, right? So it's 1 in relation to 12, 2 in relation to 12, 3 in relation to 12. That's different than if you're going to have a system of 9, which I'm going to get to, because there's 9-star key. Feng Shui astrology is Japanese astrology. This is a system of 9. So 1 out of 9 is going to be different from 1 out of 12. They're going to have some similarities, but some differences. 1 out of 9 is water, right? 1 water. That is what 1 means in the Japanese 9-key system. 1 water gathers, it focuses it from a single drop, it gathers into the mighty ocean, right? So there's that kind of thing. 1 has the significance of the fertilized seed, right? Whether you're talking about fertilized egg of an animal or a human, or fertilized seed, where it has the not only the sort of unification of being 1, where it's not growing yet, but it's fertilized, right? But it has the full potential of the whole life, right? And it's just beginning. It's just starting out, so it's 1, right? So these will all have different relationships depending on what kind of system you're talking about. 1 if we're talking about the Chinese 12 system, it's rats, yeah. So rats are first. Rats are so cunning and clever and sneaky. And the story goes that the rat hopped on the back of the ox, and the ox was first in the race. There was a race to, the top, to a race to the, I don't know, a race to something. And there was a race, right? Rat jumped on the back of an ox, and then right as the ox was approaching the finish line, the rat jumped off and crossed the finish line first. So rats are very cunning and mischievous, not necessarily honorable, I guess you could say, but definitely will get to number one by any means necessary. So anyway, there's different ways of looking at it, and rat is also water. So I guess the Asians consider one to be more watery than the Westerners, who consider it to be fire, and water are opposites. So that's, I mean, it's interesting. So I'm not going to go through each one in the different systems, but I'm just using that as an example to think about different things. In archetypes, you have to understand what the whole means. What is the part? What is the whole that the part is a part of? What kind of partition is it, right? If you're talking about any archetype, how does it relate to the whole? Right. So that's important to understand when looking at archetypes. How does it relate to the whole? Is it one of 12, one of 7, or one of, maybe there's no definite number of things that it is a part of. Maybe it's so abstract that it's not quantifiable, right? There's different kinds of archetypes, but you can try and see if it's how is it relating to the whole, and what position is it in with the whole, right? Is it number 1? Is it number 5? Is it, what number is it, right? If there is a number, if we can do that with a number, right? Otherwise, you're getting very abstract. The less you can define how the archetype relates to the whole, the more abstract you're getting, right? And the more it's easier to get confused or be diluted or have many different varied interpretations. The more defined you get, the more well, I don't know. I mean, people argue about yin and yang endlessly, so maybe that's not even true. But it's just more simple, I guess you could say. Anyway, let's keep going. So with number 4, we have the 4 directions, the 4 elements. And I'm not just going to go through each number and talk about associations. What I'm really getting at is some understanding here. So we have the 4 directions, the 4 elements in astrology, right? The 4 elements, what are they? Water, air, earth, and fire. Not that I don't know this, but I have many different, because the 5 transformations are different. Anyway. All right. 4 is the first non-prime number, which is interesting, right? As an archetype. Because 1, so a prime number is defined by it being only divisible by itself and 1, right? So I guess 1, I don't know if 1 qualifies as a prime number or not, but it does fit that description. 2, definitely by itself and 1, yeah. 3, yep. 4, no, right? 1, 2, and 4, right? So 4 breaks down. So 4 is the first non-prime number. And 4 equals death in Japanese, probably for that relationship, because also when we're looking at Western astrology, we have the water elements are all 4 based numbers, 4, 8, 12, right? And they all have the water element is the one that is connected to death. So that's a parallel. So we can say like 4, anything, if it's divided into 4, there's this element of breakdown, right? It's the first non-prime number. 4 divides into 2. 2 divides, 2 is a prime number. But so that's really interesting when looking at 4. 4 in any context, in any regard. Now 5 is a prime number, and in 5 we have the 5 transformations. And some people erroneously call the 5 transformations the 5 elements, It's not the five elements. It's the four elements. It's the five transformations. And I'm going to show you why. All right. Let's expand this a little bit. Okay, here's a graphic of the five transformations. We have metal, water, wood, fire, earth. And there's two cycles to the five transformations. One is the harmonious cycle. This is on the outside. So we'll start with water. Well, we can start with metal, actually. Metal would be the state of stasis, right? In nature, this is the seed. The seed, they germinated. They found this old date seed. It was over 2,000 years. They germinated it and it sprouted, and now they have this 2,000-year-old date tree that's been extinct for 2,000 years. How amazing is that? That has the archetypal nature of metal in the five transformations because it's in a state of stasis, right? Metal, especially stainless steel, obviously not, rusty metal like iron with iron, iron ore, I guess you could say, minerals, rocks, they don't change. They do change, but very, very, very slowly, right? Metal is a state of stasis. It's extreme contraction. It lasts. It's stable. It's durable. It's not alive, generally speaking. It's dead, but it's in a stasis state. It's sleeping, right? Holding, right? Then you get the water state, where this is the fertilization stage, the growth stage, right? And why you could say that both the sperm and the egg are in essentially a metal state, a state of stasis. When they come together, they create the water state. Or you could say the plant seed, when it actually hits water, right, develops, creates the water state. Or water, just water. You could just say water, right? But metal supports water because minerals enhance water, right? And water dissolves minerals and it makes it healthy, right? Actually, they know that if you purify water to its most pure, pristine state, it is actually caustic because has such a desire to suck up minerals that, like, if you drink that, I don't know, it'll probably kill you because it'll just suck up every bit of mineral, everything that it can dissolve in it. It'll suck it up because it needs to have some amount of like mineral solution inside of it, dissolved minerals, right? Water nourishes wood. We know that. You got to water your plants or they're gonna die. Wood feeds the fire. You can't have a fire if you don't have anything to burn. So it needs fuel. Not just wood. We have different types of fuel, but wood is like the primary essential nature of the thing that burns. And wood is also representative of all growing things, all life, really, right? All life, even animal life is still in this wood state, especially if it's growing state. Then we reach the height of fire. This is maturity. This is, all kinds of things we can relate to fire. I mean, not just fire, not just like a campfire, but like technology, development, progression, thinking, the intellect, passions, right? Fame, recognition, enlightenment. It's at the top, right? That's not a coincidence. The fire is dependent on wood or fuel, and then fire produces ash, earth, right? Burns, nourishes the earth, right? The best earth on the planet is like considered volcanic soil, right? Where there's a volcano, great volcano, and produces great earth. Now, earth is the state of offspring, you could say, pregnancy, fruit, right? Return to the earth, seed-bearing plants, the seeds themselves, so like squash, pumpkin, even like tomatoes, fruits, things like that. It's fire would be the flower, the flowering, the blossoming, the prime, and then it produces the fruit, returning back to the earth, feeding, nourishing. death, dying, right? The end of the life cycle. It's not the end, it's the nearing the end, going down, old age, right? And then earth supports metal. Metals that stasis state, the not dying, but already dead or slumbering, sleeping, right? Um, but yeah, earth and metal, right? So like metal would be found in ore in the ore state, under a mountain or something like that, in the ground, in a mine, in a cave. So earth supports metal. So this is the supportive cycle of the five transformations, but there's also a destructive cycle. So metal cuts down trees. We know that with an axe or saw or chainsaw, right? Metal will destroy wood. Um, wood destroys earth by sucking it up, right? You can deplete soil by plants, right? If you don't replenish the soil, the plants are going to suck out all the nutrition, and either it's going to be recycled or it's going to be lost, right? You got dead soil. If you grow too much on the soil, you get dead soil because you're taking the plants afterwards. So you're taking all the nutrition away. Now, earth muddies up the water, right? And blocks it and dams it and makes it undrinkable. And, it's just muddy and gross. And who wants muddy water? I guess some people, maybe pigs. Pigs like muddy water. But I don't eat pigs, so there's that. Water and fire. I mean, this is an obvious one. Water puts out fire. um, so yeah, that's natural. Of course, I'm also thinking about like making tea or cooking soup or pasta or whatever, right? We have clever uses of these things too, to where they don't they work to our advantage. But if you put water on fire, it puts it out. That's an obvious one. And then fire melts metal and destroys metal. Right? So this is the destructive cycle. And that's why it's called transformations, because each one of these things is transforming into the next, right? Metal gets dissolved in water. Water gets sucked up by the tree. The tree burns for the fire. The fire turns to coal and ash and becomes soil. And then the soil gathers together and forms iron ore or metal ore or mineral ore, minerals, precious stones, things like that over time, right? And so it repeats like that. So they transform into one another. So that's why it's the five transformations and not the five elements. Okay, so 4 elements, 5 transformations. So that's important to notice, to understand. Incidentally, if you are aware of the 10 heavenly stems of Chinese 4 pillars astrology, 4 pillars, 10 heavenly stems, 12 earthly branches. So the 12 earthly branches are the 12 animals. 10 heavenly stems are the 5 transformations times 2, yin and yang. It's literally what it is. You have yin water, yang wood, yang wood, yin fire, yang fire, yin earth, yang earth, yin metal, yang metal. Incidentally, if you want to know what the 4 pillars are, they are year, month, day, and hour. They have animal and 10 heavenly stem combinations. So for me, I was born in the year of dragon and yang fire, right? So now we're getting the 12 heavenly stems, dragon, 12 earthly branches, sorry, 12 earthly branches. So again, which is interesting, 10 heaven, 12 earth. So they're dividing it into 2. So we got 2, 4, 10, and 12, right? Yin and yang. So the 12 earthly branches are the animals. So I'm dragon, and everyone's born different year. Some people are dragons, other people are going to be different animals. And then this particular dragon was fire dragon and a yang fire dragon, right? And I don't think you can have yin fire dragon. I think it's all yang fire dragon, based on the a little bit fuzzy, but it's only one, there's only one possibility for each combination. Anyway. And then my month is Fire Horse, and I forget if it's Yin or Yang. Or no, was it Wood Horse? Anyway, it's horse because June. And then hour is Young Slow Rat. And then no, day is Young Slow Rat, hour is Metal Monkey, right? So young Metal Monkey. I think mine are all young. But anyway, everyone's gonna have a different four pillar setup. But so anyway, that's just brief introduction, but it's tied into this, right? Okay, so that's number 5. I'm not gonna do each one of these. We can come up with archetypal relations to each number. That's not really what this is about. This is about understanding, trying to understand archetypes as a whole, right? So let's see, what else did I pull up here? So here's the same 5 transformations, but here you have it in relation to 9 key. So 9 key is Japanese, not Chinese. So here you have the 5, and they have it rotated differently because on the other one, fire is at the top, but here they have water at the top. But you have 1 water, 3, 4 wood, 9 fire, 2, 5, 8 earth, 6, 7 metal. Yeah, so water and fire only have 1 number. So 1 water, 9 fire. This is a cycle of 9, obviously. Wood and metal both have 2, 3 and 4, 6 and 7. And then earth has 2, 5, and 8. So earth has 3. It's interesting, but it makes more sense when you look at it this way with the magic squares. All right, so here's one where they have all the different magic squares lined up. And so if you see this magic square, so this is 9 key, so there's 9, and it's very harmonious when you have it like this, right? But anyway, you add it up, it's going to add up to 15. 4 plus 9 plus 2 equals 15. 3 plus 5 plus 7 equals 15. 8 plus 7, 15. 8 plus 1 is 9, plus 6, 15. 4 plus 3 plus 7 plus 8. 4 plus 3, 7 plus 8 is 15. So they each equal 15, even diagonally. 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 6 is 15. 8 plus 5 is, what is 8 plus 5? 13 plus 2 is 15, right? So every way, and obviously these are not, the outer ones, these are not, they do not add up to 15, but they follow the same order, right? So we got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We start in the center, or I start in the center. So it's like this: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1. Right. So this way in 9 key, we'd say, so there's 9 different charts, obviously. And this is the 5 chart. Here's the 1 chart. Here's the 2 chart. Here's the 3 chart, 4 chart, 5 chart, 6 chart, 7 chart, 8 chart, 9 chart. Right. So these are the charts of the different numbers in 9 key. Right. And so it's this is how normally we look at it. And the 3 numbers, in case you're curious, are derived from the year, and then we use the month chart. So like for me, I was born in the 6th year, but 1 month, and the 6 is in the 1 position because it's in the 1. So I'm a 611. So anyway, that would take a lot. I would need to do my own separate video to really go into depth about that, but that's just to give you a brief taste of the 9 cycle of archetypes. This is 1 out of 9, right? So 9 is the pi is divided into 9, and so each one is a piece of that 9, right? So if we talk about 12, then what's really important to understand, which some people miss, is that each sign is a portion of a whole, right? And so sometimes people will, single out different signs. I don't like this sign, I don't like that sign, like as if it's up for debate, like as if an astrologer who takes themselves seriously, who actually wants to learn something, would have the possibility of dismissing one part of the whole, right? In other words, that's tantamount to saying I don't believe in truth, right? Like I believe in something very dishonest. If you understand why, because each part is a part of the whole. So if you don't want to be truthful, you can be like, yes, I don't like this sign. This sign is bad. This sign is wrong. Maybe you're the problem, right? Did you ever think about that? Maybe you haven't come to terms with different parts of the whole because it's reflecting back at you. It's rubbing you the wrong way. It's irritating that part of you that you haven't looked at yet, that you don't want to look at, right? It's a reflection of you if you don't like a part of the whole. So I mean, I know people joke about it, and it's fun to have fun, of course, but in all seriousness, we cannot, as somebody who really wants to study archetypes, you cannot have favorites, right? It's simply wrong. You can have personal, yeah. I mean, my personality might, jive with this type more than that type. Fine, that's different. But fundamentally, having a bias, right, towards or against certain signs or parts of the whole shows a dishonesty, because the truth is one. So if the whole zodiac or any archetypal system is representative of truth, because oneness is wholeness, oneness is God, oneness is truth, right? If you're saying I don't like part of the truth, you don't like part of the truth. That's called dishonesty, right? You don't like the truth. So, and the same thing goes like if you have like some people talk about one sign like it's better than the others, and this is just a misunderstanding. This is somebody who really doesn't understand what archetypes are and how to use them appropriately. You cannot have a part of the whole that is better than the other parts of the whole. It simply doesn't work that way. And that's also, it's really important to understand this, because then you can understand how each archetype gets its nature. Then you're not confused by like, just, okay, the book says this and that's what it is. It's not because the book says it. Why did the book get it? Because somebody else understood archetypes, the nature of archetypes, and realized that, okay, 12 out of 12, 6 out of 12, 7 out of 12, 8 out of 12, 9 out of 12, 4 out of 12, 5 out of 12, any number out of 12, or whatever system you're using, has inherently qualities that are there, right? Number one has to mean something significant to number one. Aries has to relate to number one, has to, right? One water in the 9-key system has to relate to number one. One, her sign in the Chinese zodiac, the rat, has to relate to number one, has to. It's inseparable. So you have to look at these numbers, right? 2 has to relate to number 2. It's not just arbitrary. People think it's arbitrary. It's not. You cannot have a true archetype, a working system, where the number is not related to its own nature. Right? So, I mean, that is really key in understanding any archetypal system. Yeah, I don't think I want to, go too much further in that. I think this point is really simple and fundamental, and I think I've made a case for it. So in my fashion and typical, Joe Waxman style, I guess, mediocre astrologer style. So guys, I'm not going to belabor it any longer. This is my talk for now on archetypes. So enjoy your Christmas or holidays, or whatever you're celebrating, Hanukkah, whatever, Kwanzaa, I don't care. I really don't care. So happy holidays. Take a victory laugh. Have a good one. Mediocre astrologer signing off. He's okay. We're okay. Everyone's okay. All right. Bye, guys. Have fun. Be well. Hit the like button, please. Thanks. Bye.